Coming up on this episode of the Village Idiom.
So you mean back to square one and just accept it? I'm never leaving square one?
So all I heard you say was squares, and then I got hungry.
Dum dum da da, Village Idiom.
Hello and welcome to the Village Idiom.
We are a podcast that every week chooses a popular saying to take a shallow, hopefully comedic, once in a while even interesting dive into its meaning, its usage, its origins. But we're also going to use it to hang our otherwise directionless conversation on. My name is Jurassic Mark.
And I am Skitty.
Welcome
Happy
back.
New Year's Eve.
Almost. Oh, Happy New Year's Eve.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. You too.
It's a great day to experience Happy New Year's Eve. It's so nice to say it twice. Happy New Year's Eve.
Now imagine if your wife's name was Eve.
Wow, that's like an inception of Eves.
New Year's. Happy New Year's Eve.
Oh. That's just too deep. I'm just trying to add on more. Like if I can think of other Eve related things.
Eve?
Like on an Eve. And so I said, Happy New Year's Eve on the Eve.
Happy New Year's Eve. On the Eve.
On the Eve.
You could go clean the eaves outside.
Yeah, those eaves.
Happy New Year's Eve. I'm gonna go clean the eaves. No, let's get Jeeves. Anyway, Happy New Year's Eve. Yeah. You have any plans for New Year's?
I love one New Year's tradition that is a fantastic, fun way is we get together with another few families and play board games.
Fun.
Yeah,
time.
so if you're a board gaming family like we are, because the theory is just teach them strategy, game theory, and then in real life they'll crush your children.
What?
And so that's why we start them early.
Who crushes your children? What was that?
No, I teach my children to crush other children.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and it's there's just something warm about watching other people's kids like just be devastated in a game because my kid crushed them. It's like it's so satisfying. I don't know if I can just bring enough words to it.
Okay.
Just the disappointment in their uneducated little faces.
Wow.
Yeah, watching other people's kids suffer while my kids literally destroy them at games.
Is it the suffering that you like watching, or just watching your kids in victory?
It's the suffering. But maybe that's just me.
Well, this is a good time of year to have chosen the idiom that we have today. Listen to this one.
Okay.
Now I'm back to square one.
One more time. Daniel LaRusso.
Now I'm back to square one.
Wow.
From the new Cobra Kai series. Back to square one because, it's
Ralph
just
Macchio.
another date in the year. But everybody's like, you know what? January 1st, I'm going to this.
Press the reset button.
And you can even mock it a little bit because everybody couldn't wait for 2020 to be done because of COVID and restrictions. And,
Oh, yeah.
oh, man, I can't wait for 2021.
2021's got to be better than 2020.
The clock struck midnight. It became January 1, 2021, and
It was
nothing
like
changed.
It was like Y2K.
Exactly.
Nothing happened.
Nothing happened.
No, so this year it's definitely got to get better.
Yeah, maybe.
And probably nothing's going to happen. I'm actually a fairly optimistic person. And I'm thinking we're going to have another year of the same.
You can't, even if stuff evolves, it gets better. Or worse. Whatever. Has nothing to do with tomorrow's midnight hour.
Yes.
Not
it's
tomorrow's. Yes, tomorrow's.
Yes, tomorrow's. So as you see that, I always like to take the idiom and look for it in the news, back to square one.
That's funny. I do my research in the nude.
And the top 5 nude entries.
See? I thought you were moving on, so that's what made it funny.
The top 5 news entries are all COVID.
Of course.
Yeah, it's guess what's coming to get you in 2022.
Related to just today's news or related to Back to Square One?
Back to square one. It's
What?
like, we don't do politics. We don't do many current event things. We try and live light and not really based in reality.
All right, send me nudes.
And so
bring it on.
And so the top 5 news entries, yeah, it's the Omicron rollout.
Omicron.
Omicrons rollout.
Autobots.
Yeah, so that. And so it's top 5 entries. Oh, back to square one.
Right.
Back to square one. I'm not sure if we're back to square one. No, it's back to square one. We're looking at back to square one. Omicron's coming to get you. And it was like, oh, the news is terrible.
Yeah. Well, good news is we're not back to square one. We know what to expect now, at least.
Yeah, you do it for a couple of years, you get into a rhythm.
I don't want the rhythm. Do you think we'll ever go back to what it was?
Oh, yeah. Some of us are already doing it.
No, but I mean, in general, can I ever go to a movie without showing my papers?
Well, I guess it's like, I don't know if there's any other time in history where you're required to show your papers to go places.
Well, not in this country.
And then they got out of it. So
There you go.
yeah, just inevitable. Just got to outlast.
Just give it a century.
That's all it takes.
All right.
A good world war and it'll be over.
You're such a silver lining kind of
You
guy.
know? I don't like to dwell on the negative. Oh, it was. It's funny with the initial thought, just to completely get us into something more stupid. When back to square one, my brain immediately went to the Elaine Seinfeld scene.
Okay.
About sparing a square.
Oh, yeah.
It was back to square one. Can you spare a square? It was all I could get in my head.
That's funny.
I can't spare a square.
That's funny.
Back to square one. I can't spare a square.
So what are the news? Oh, that's the news.
It was
it's all about
all the news.
Oh, funny.
Yeah. Yeah, and I made so I'm like, oh, is that just related to maybe previous searches? But I made sure I've been using a lot of DuckDuckGo.
That's funny. I just heard about DuckDuckGo for the first time this week.
Oh yeah, I'm getting off the train.
Are you?
I'm anonymizing.
Just for better results.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, you feel like you're being fed something. And
Well,
so
when you're, I haven't used it much yet. I got the app. I've barely used it because even I started to question it even as I got it because I'm like, if the app is on my Google phone, is it still tracking it?
Yield. I don't know about that. All I'm after is like anything different than and even DuckDuckGo was like, nope, next year's gonna suck. It's like, oh, thanks, DuckDuckGo.
DuckDuckGo back to Google.
And so yeah, DuckDuckGoing back to square one.
Funny.
Yeah, starting fresh every time.
So going back to square one clearly means starting something over, but it's more than just starting over because sometimes a start over is nice. Like,
okay,
this when you say back to square one, it's usually negative. Like all the work I've put into fill in the blank,
yes,
out the window. I'm back to square one.
Mm-hmm.
So
I was like earnestly in asking. I thought it would be an interesting conversation. Join with us, listening, Village Idiom children, to see if you can identify with any of these things. So, is starting again fresh easier, faster than fixing something?
I guess it's going to depend every time.
In which ways?
Well, okay. So several years ago, I was about the weight I am now. Mm-hmm. Actually, heavier than I am now. And I worked
Holy
hard.
cow.
I worked
Okay, no, sorry.
I worked hard.
I meant to keep that inside.
I ate properly for like 2 years.
You were pretty ripped.
I worked out every day without fail. I got to an amazing weight and I felt amazing about myself. Now, I look in the mirror and I keep telling myself, okay,
You're
January
still doing
1st,
better than I'm doing.
I am back to square one. Like, I can't believe I let myself go. Like,
You don't have
you
to.
know what I mean, though?
I do know exactly what you mean.
That's going back to square one because if I'm only back at square one if I decide to fix it. So fixing it, what's the difference in that situation? What's the difference between fixing it and
But you have no choice. Like, right. So your choice is either fix it or just be unhappy with yourself. But no, there's not like a replace. You can't just altered carbon take your brain out of your body and put it into a new sleeve.
But your question was, what's better, to fix it or to be back at square one? What's the difference? So you mean back to square one and just accept it? I'm never leaving square one.
So all I heard you say was squares, and then I got hungry. Leftovers from Christmas.
This is my problem.
Exactly. Okay. So I remember. So it was about a year ago in the Christmas area, and it had snowed, and I thought, what a fabulous time to teach.
Something crawling on the ceiling above us.
Yep, that's true. It looks like a ladybug.
I think it's a ladybug,
but it could be like a tick. And so, if next week we
both have
Lyme disease, then that's what happened.
Oh, if you can't joke about Lyme disease,
It's like
Sorry, got distracted. I
Well,
took
now
a
it is
drink,
distracting.
and I looked up, and I'm like,
It's like he's lining up to drop on us.
He really is.
Yeah, he's like,
Unless it's
right
ladybug,
about
then
there.
she is.
Yeah, I don't want to be. Well, he can be a male ladybug, like in Bug's Life. That's what his problem was.
Yeah, it could be a ladybug.
Why do I gotta be a lady?
Identifies as a man bug.
No, he was like an actual man ladybug.
I know. That's fine. You be you.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, and so we thought, this would be a fun time to teach her a little about controlling your vehicle in icy snow conditions. And so we did like some drifting, and like I would randomly grab the e-brake. I'm like, just turn a little bit here, grab the e-brake, and then make her correct. And she was really good at it. She did a good job. And this one time I yanked early, and she was more turned, and we had a little too much speed, and it was like we did a full like 360 in an intersection.
Oh boy.
But there's no cars around, so I wasn't that concerned about it. That thing.
See,
it did fly
did
down.
try and drop on us,
it did.
but it flew towards the light.
Yeah, that's what he's after.
Thank goodness for studio lights. Otherwise, that thing would be in my hair right now.
And then we came to a complete stop in the middle of the intersection, but where the plows had like pushed snow to the side, some of that snow was rock hard.
Oh, yeah.
And so it was like, boom, we came to the stop, and we just kind of looked at each other, but she didn't put her foot on the brake. And so the car was just slowly going forward, just under like its own car.
Gravity.
I don't know, whatever it is, no, when you don't have like your foot on the brake,
just cruising.
the idling,
Yeah.
the idling of the engine was dragging it through. And then it was like, poof, then we hit an embankment, but just from dead stop in an intersection, 10 feet over to an embankment.
Right.
Well, it put a hole the size of a volleyball through my bumper.
Because of how sharp the
Yes, because of how
ice or whatever
the
it was.
impact just hit the bumper, right? And it got me thinking about like, I'll just repair it.
Okay.
Well, repairing it was like hundreds of dollars. And my buddy's like, we can just get you a new one for like $100. Like, we'll just go down to wherever. I get you another one, $100. We'll get it in, wham, bam. Sure enough, that's what it cost.
Right.
Repairing it was going to be hundreds of dollars. In the end, I would have a possible Ripley looking bumper that had like a patched hole in it, or I could full out replace it. So it's cheaper, faster, going to look better to replace it than repair it.
So where was the Back.To.Square.One part?
It's not important. It was based on the question, and I've got another question for you.
Okay.
Of whether
Fix
it was
or replace.
Fix or replace. Getting back to square one via fix, or getting back.
Okay,
to,
so that's a different
coming
question.
back to
okay,
original.
now I'm with you. So what's better? To get back to square one. But back to square one, that would be a positive situation. Back to a new bumper, that's a positive thing.
Right, so getting
Like,
back to
it's
square
not
one.
like you got your new bumper
But that
and
was
went, great,
replaced.
back to-
that was just
back
like
to
replace.
square
Leave the
one.
past behind. Accidents, it's all been done. Just get a new one.
Yeah.
Like, the damage is done. It would be more time consuming, look worse, expensive to fix something,
Right.
than to just start again.
Yeah.
And then the flip side, because when I start looking it up, and then all this thing on repair, like, oh no, if you have the choice, you should choose to repair something as opposed to replace it, because of like,
Environment.
yeah, your stove goes out, don't just throw it away. Like,
Well, then make it cheaper to fix.
fix it, or fix it yourself if you can, or all this sort of thing. And then this case was being made for don't throw anything out, always fix it. And so then I was torn to go back to square one with a working unit. It was just the method to get there. It was a little messier than I thought.
Yeah, so your version of back to square one is positive because you need to do something to get it back to the way you like. Whereas square one is usually the beginning of a process. So, for example, if you decided to repair it, like you did, you know what? I got this hole in my bumper, size of a volleyball. I'm going to repair it, do the environment some good. I'm not going to just replace it and have this throwaway plastic. I'm going to repair it. It's a little ripply, but not bad. Got it fixed. And then the first day you got it fixed, she puts a hole in it again. Then you'd be back to square one.
So I had an intact bumper. I'm just backing it up one more step. I had an intact bumper. And so I think of square one as an intact bumper. I know, not a broken bumper.
See, I think that's a neutral position.
Well,
Because a square one is the
if we'd
beginning
been in
of
neutral,
a project.
I wouldn't have been in that problem.
But you had no project. You
it's
weren't even on
because we
square
were
one
in
yet.
drive, not neutral, is what I'm saying. That's how the problem happened.
Yeah.
Is that it wasn't in neutral.
Okay, God, forget it.
If I'd had a neutral position, of course, nothing would have happened.
Well, you do have one. And then gravity would have taken you into the same embankment.
Yeah, or
the other way.
Or the other
into
way.
traffic.
So either way, it was, do you fix it?
Well, listen.
Do you not fix it?
Okay, one more here.
Okay.
We're back to square one.
Sons of Anarchy. All right. Let's get, before we get into origins, and instead of going back and forth as to what square one means, let's play a little game. Got a little game.
I like it. Village children, chime in on what you think is correct.
I'm going to give you 3 potential answers to the origins of the idiom back to square one. First one. I'm going to keep these simple. No explanations. Just more like
In Vienna, Austria,
category.
in 1600s.
Number 1.
Okay.
Football or soccer commentators in the 1930s. That's all I'm going to give you. Actually, I'll give you a little more. No, that's all I'm going to give you.
So either you were just about to make up something, in which case it would be false,
Okay, I'll follow through that.
or you did know
The
something.
commentators used to have imaginary lines on the football or soccer pitch, creating 8 squares, and they would call out what square, so the people listening on the radio could tell where the ball was. They would, and they're like, back to square one.
I understand. Like just a grid system.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wasn't actually painted on the field, but... Okay, number 2. Snakes and Ladders. The
Back
board
to
game.
square one. Okay. I don't know that there is a back to square one. There's a head from square one. I think it's a ladder at square one.
Number 3.
Okay.
Hopscotch.
Okay, I'm actually half familiar with this. You throw out the stone, it lands on a number. You
Which
hop
is
to
in the
that number,
square.
you pick it up. I don't know if you go back. Is it all forward? Okay, I'm following. Maybe it is go back.
Soccer, snakes and ladders, hopscotch.
Do you have any more backstory on number 3?
Number 3, hopscotch. There is a square one that has the number 1 in the square.
Okay.
And
So you do have backstory. That's all I was fishing for. Illegitimate children. I'm going to go. I don't like hopscotch. The soccer pitch, because that would actually be useful. You know, he's the striker is running down. He's in square. I don't know, 2. Huh. I've never heard it before, which makes me think it's not that.
I've never seen you contemplate.
Number 2.
Number 2, which was snakes and ladders.
Snakes and ladders. Though I'm pretty sure it's only a ladder at position 1.
So there can't be a ladder at position 1.
I think it is. If you roll a 1, you zoom up.
But you're already on one.
Oh, or the
don't-
first square.
Just says start.
Does it?
I don't know.
I think you would be off board and then roll a 1 to get on board.
If I scrolled down to the game board on my screen, you'd know that I'd have that information, which would give you a leaning towards this answer.
Do you really? I haven't looked.
It's not on my screen right now. You
Okay.
can look.
No, I'm still going to. Snakes and ladders.
Snakes and ladders. Well, let's find out. Let's get into origins, shall we?
I said some words, where'd they go? Where'd they go? No one can know. I turned around and looked behind. Those words came from another mind.
Well, today's game was a bit of a tricky one. Tricky answers, because we're going to dig into all 3 of those as a part of the origins. So 1 definitely is more likely the winner,
Okay.
but all 3 are credited from time to time.
Okay.
So we're going to start with number 1, which is the football commentaries, or more specifically, the BBC commentaries. If you ask a group of people in the UK about the origin of going back to square one, it's more than likely that somebody in the crowd is going to say, it came from BBC football commentators.
Okay.
So they're really wanting to take pride in it. And early BBC radio commentaries did help listeners follow the progress of football and rugby games by, notionally anyway, dividing the pitch into 8 rectangles. So commentators described the play by saying which square the ball was in. So this is a real thing.
Okay.
The Radio Times, this BBC's listings guide, referred to the practice in an issue from January 1927. Says commentaries that use a numbering system certainly happened. It shows prints of the pitch diagrams. You can see the drawing right here down on my screen. that there's 8 rectangles.
That actually makes sense.
Yeah, so they radio only, you could say, and moving into number 4 or whatever. So recordings of early commentaries also exist, including the very first broadcast ever sports commentary of any kind, a rugby match, which it happens to be. That commentary and many that followed referred listeners to the printed maps, so people would have these maps in their hand as they listened all on the radio. And a second commentator, not the one who's saying so-and-so passed to so-and-so or da-da-da-da-da, a second commentator would just call out the numbers as the ball moved around the pitch.
Interesting.
So you're over here in this microphone, I'm in your left ear, you're in the right ear, and I'm like, and Ronaldo kicks the ball to da-da-da, oh, it's a header by, and you're like 3, 2,
Interesting.
4.
In the background. It's kind of like Braille, like radio Braille.
Yeah, actually. So, but however, in none of these recordings, and they go all the way back to the very first one, nowhere does an existing commentary is the phrase ever said, back to square one. Never, not once. So despite that fact, the BBC issued a piece in January 2007 of the Radio Times celebrating 80 years of BBC football commentary, in which the football commentator John Murray stated with confidence that Radio Times grids gave us the phrase back to square one. So they announced it like it was fact, but it's never been said.
Okay. I didn't like it because I would think of you would just say a center line or the striker's moving it up the field, but I could see how it could be valuable.
Yeah.
But
so some things that work against it. Well, first of all, the grid system was dropped in the 30s. I don't know if that was when is television that old? Not really. But anyway, it was dropped in the 30s.
I think so, because there's like Hitler stuff on film.
Oh yeah. So maybe that's when the grid system stopped. So Hitler stuff.
Yeah.
So Murray's confidence
silent movies and stuff got to go back before then.
It isn't backed by evidence. So here's some things. So the squares aren't squares, they're rectangles, but I don't know. Like if you're just casually talking about the grid, I don't know if you would say rectangle number 4 or if you just get
I don't know. He struck it cross field.
And then in the recordings, no commentary ever used the word square. It would say just the number.
Ronaldo. Yep.
So the other thing is the position marked as area 1 on the grid is at one end of the pitch, which doesn't make any sense in a football game because one team, back to square one, would only apply to one team.
Yes.
So it also doesn't work.
Yeah.
So
this one, I don't like this one.
The worst evidence is that it's not found in print until 1952, like decades and decades after that form of commentating hasn't existed. So it's unlikely, but the BBC officially is trying to claim ownership, and a lot of UK residents would back it up. Okay. So the second was board games, or more specifically, Snakes and Ladders. We now have a picture of Snakes and Ladders, and you're right. There's a ladder right on number 1. Mm-hmm. Interesting. So you couldn't go back to square one, at least on this board that I'm looking at right now. So other sources report that the phrase refers to snakes and ladders, or shoots and ladders, which was the American version. The earliest citation of the phrase, like I said, was in 1952. Funny enough, in a UK publication, the Economic Journal, which says he has the problem of maintaining the interest of the reader who is always being sent back to square one in a sort of intellectual game of snakes and ladders. So he refers to the game.
Oh, so it's not actually part of the game.
As a metaphor of going back.
Yeah, because you're dragged down from whatever it is, the top row back to like third row or something.
Yeah, so you could find yourself back to square 6 on a shoot. Well, you know what? This is Shoots and Ladders, the picture. So maybe Snakes and Ladders is different. But
maybe.
Anyway, Snakes and Ladders. Another early use of Back to Square One. It was, again, a UK newspaper, the Liverpool Echo, also referred to snakes and ladders. And it said, if the farmer wins, the line may have to be changed. In a game of snakes and ladders, the ministry planners may find themselves back at square one. So they would tie it to the board game in both of the earliest citations. So, so here's the one thing. It's exactly what you said. Despite those quotes, it isn't a usual feature of snakes and ladders that players are sent back to square one. Of the earliest examples of such boards that do exist, only a few have a snake in the first square. So there are some.
Okay. Sure.
So that's that one. Likely comes from
like just dragging you
Snakes.
down from an advantage back to disadvantage.
You're starting over. And the last one, Hopscotch. This playground game, as you know, it's played with a grid of numbered squares in a variety of shapes and sizes. The precise rules of the game vary depending on where you grew up and who taught you in the first place, or just kids making up their own rules. Now we're going to try it this way. But you hop from square to square, missing out on the square that contains the thrown rock or stone or whatever. And they usually go from 1 to 8 or 10 and then back to square one.
Yeah, it's 9.
So they do come back.
Like 1, 2, 3, a double, 1 and a double, and then the final.
Yeah. So
I think
in
it's
that
the
case,
9.
the meaning isn't there. Snakes and Ladders has
And
the
you
meaning.
don't go back.
You do go back.
In Hopscotch?
Yeah, because you pick up your stone on the way back.
Oh,
On the
I
way-
see, but goofing it up doesn't penalize you to start from the beginning.
I don't know if you can really goof it up, can you?
No, just say you threw it out.
Right,
you're
yeah,
trying
no,
to get
so
to
the
4
meaning's
and
not
you throw
there.
it, oh, I got
Yeah.
it onto the 5.
So the meaning, you
It doesn't
never
mean
go
you start back to 1.
No.
Yeah.
You come back to square one, pick up your stone.
You start
and-
to where you last goofed up.
Yeah. So,
I do have a game, now that we're talking about it, Foursquare.
yeah.
That is a game where you would go back to
square
You
one.
actually go back to square one.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, you're working your way up through a series of 4 squares in a 2x2
Depending on how
pattern.
many people are playing. You might go back to square nothing at the end of 20 people line
Sure,
up.
sure, exactly. But then it restarts back at 1.
Yeah.
You can move yourself up to a king position.
I was
but
just
then-
going to say, did you do 1, 2, 3, 4? Or did you do whatever, king, queen?
It's 1 to 4, but position 4 is the king.
Yeah, so did you do all the names or did you only name king?
I think it's only the king.
Yeah, we had like king, queen, jack, and we usually had a derogatory term for ace.
Loser.
It was ace.
Oh, I
with
see.
With a
Yes.
short a sound
Yes. Yes.
in elementary school. Yeah, so Chutes and Ladders or Snakes and Ladders, the only one that it has a slight resemblance to the way
It's
we
Foursquare.
use it. It's Foursquare.
The
End
answer
of
is just
story.
Foursquare.
Here's a fun little thing, though. The game of Hopscotch, the name so let me back that up. The game's name derives from Scotch, of course, which was used from the 17th century to denote a line scored on the ground. Somehow that was called a Scotch if you did a line on the ground for scoring.
Well, the original Hopscotch
And hopping it.
was played in a bar. And then, I'm just making this up.
Okay.
And then, so each of the positions had a shooter glass of scotch in the corner. And so as you threw out your pebble, and if you completed that, you'd be the one to get that shooter glass. And so by the time you had a couple in you, your aim was off and everything, but the guy behind you who was starting fresh, he'd throw it out, he'd have a better chance. And so it was hopscotch because of the scotch being the shooter in the corner.
And the goal was to get through all of them, and the last shot glass was square shaped.
Mm-hmm.
And so you'd go back to the square one.
Back to the square one. And that's how lies are made, children.
So the truth is, we gave you the game of 3 options, most likely Snakes and Ladders, but we don't know.
It's
but
Foursquare.
What it seems to be is that whichever thing you heard first is what you believe,
Well, that's not too far from reality, is it?
right? Like the UK guys, it's the BBC thing. American Snakes and Ladders team, they're like, yeah, it's got to be this. Makes the most sense. But it's whatever you heard first is what people lean towards.
Well,
And
children, you
that's
heard
what
it
Google-
here.
That's what Google keeps
Village
telling me.
Idiom children, it's from Foursquare. So you go and tell your friends what you learned today.
Yeah,
Back to Square One is originally a game about Foursquare,
exactly.
which involved a rubber ball.
Well, back to square one.
You recognize that?
No.
Joey from Friends. Okay, so
Man, we're into the thick of it. We need to get some
do
some
we?
riddlinks rolling here.
all right. Well, should we?
Oh my.
Riddling is a game we like to play that takes a 2-part trivia-based question and requires a 2-part but overlapping answer. Let me give you a little example. So last week, our idiom du sama,
This,
our idiom du sama, it was down to earth, and we left you with this one. The birthplace of Jesus was either the northern or southern half of the earth. Did you get that one?
That's a Bethlehem hemisphere.
Nailed it. Bethlehem and Hemisphere, and that's how you play the game of Riddlink. I got a couple for today.
I got a couple. Let me get this rolling.
Okay.
We did it again directly after doing it the first time, which took us back to the beginning.
What? Say it again.
We did it again directly after doing it the first time, which took us back to the beginning. Which took us to the beginning. I'm gonna take
Is it back to Back to Square One?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I included a back in there. I shouldn't have, but
Back to square one.
Back.To.Square.One.
That's all right. I like that. I like the back and forth. Okay, I got one.
Perfect.
Okay. This is what this is also known as when it starts over. Let me repeat it. This is what this is also known as when it starts over.
Well, I know this song. And I'm gonna go with there's some Backstreet. It's Backstreet's back to Backstreet's back to square one.
That's it. Backstreet's back. So it's everybody, and in brackets, Backstreet's back.
Backstreet's back to square one. Oh man, I had no idea you're pulling.
Backstreet's back, square one.
Leave it to you to pull out a boy band. Okay, let's start over the idiom with Liam, Harry, Niles, Zane, and Louie.
Back to square one direction. Another boy band. Nicely done. Oh, that's funny.
Illegitimate children, you can find...
The next one is New Kids on the Block to Square One.
You can answer this next one by reaching out to us on Instagram at @village.idiom or email us thevillageidiompodcast at gmail.com, or whether it's this cesspool of debauchery and self-loathing that is called the Facebook or the Twitters, but we do like the YouTube, at 3 Minutes Gone.
Nicely done. Well, I'm going to step outside of our idiom and go with a Happy New Year riddling to leave everybody
Oh, that's a good one.
guessing. So the one we're going to leave everybody just dangling out there is perfect vision in the new year of our Lord.
Okay.
That's it. Perfect vision in the new year of our Lord.
And that's 3 Minutes Gone. That's funny.
Yeah, you got that one.
Yeah, I do. Well, Happy New Year's Eve to you all. Hope you have a safe and fun evening, and etc. Old acquaintance, forget him. I'm Skinny.
I am Jurassic, I don't know, Happy New Year, Mark.
And these are the Village Idioms.
I'm back to square one.
And that's 3 minutes gone.